Are you looking to enhance your gaming experience both in terms of fluidity and performance? Well, you've come to the right place, because today we're going to be taking a look at 5 different settings most people forget to enable that can definitely make their games run way better. Let's talk about it. Before that, this video is brought to you by Corsair and their brand new Vengeance DDR5 RAM. With its great looking heatsink and blazing fast speeds, the new Vengeance DDR5 sticks are a great choice for any new DDR5 compatible build. So if you want to learn more, be sure to click the link in the description below. Alright, so first let's head on into Windows, because 4 out of the 5 settings can actually be very quickly adjusted right from within your operating system. But stop! Real quick, I want to mention that this guide is mainly for Nvidia users. However, that being said, many of the settings I go over in today's video can be applied to systems with AMD cards, but it is probably going to look quite a bit different when you take a look at your settings, so you might have to do a little bit more digging around. And the second thing I want to go over real quick before we get into this video is that I think it's really important that more people learn about adjusting these settings, because guys, it really pains me to know that there are easily millions of people out there who have spent a ton of money on their systems only to be getting actually a worse experience than other people who have spent far less. So in order to help those people out and help them get the most out of their systems, I would really appreciate it if you would help me get this video out to as many people as possible by liking the video, commenting below, what your specs are in your system, and sharing this video with as many of your friends or on any social media sites that you might be on. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into this video. Alright, so here we are in Windows, and the first thing you're going to do is right click the screen, and if you're on Windows 10 it'll be right here, but on Windows 11 you're going to do show more options and then click on Nvidia control panel. Now once this thing opens up, the first thing we're going to do is head on over to manage 3D settings right here. Now, once you're in manage 3D settings, I'm going to get this kind of centered here. We're going to head on over to low latency mode, and we're going to enable this and set it to ultra. Now, the reason why we're setting this to ultra is because with games that have Nvidia Reflex or AMD's alternative, this is actually going to allow you to get much lower input latency and could make the difference between you winning and losing, and it could also just feel a little bit snappier. Now, the second thing we're going to do is actually enable a max frame rate. Now, this is going to depend on the display you have. For me, I have a 120 Hertz display, so I would set it to something like 116, but if you have something like 144 Hertz display, you'd set it to 140, basically like 4 frames per second below your max frame rate. And the reason why we're doing this is because if you have a G-Sync or FreeSync display, that is going to actually allow you to stay within that G-Sync or FreeSync range much more consistently, giving you a better experience. And now the last thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to enable vertical sync, and we're just going to turn it to on. Now, this might actually seem redundant or bizarre to you, because you're probably asking yourself, well, if I have a G-Sync or FreeSync display, why would I enable vertical sync? Wouldn't that actually make things a little bit worse? And actually, no, there's a whole article on Blurbusters discussing how having Vsync plus G-Sync or FreeSync in tandem actually allows them to get basically the best of both worlds, and it still is going to be much lower latency input rather than just having Vsync on. Now, obviously, if you have a non-G-Sync or FreeSync display, you're going to have vertical sync on regardless. So in my opinion, this should basically just be set on all systems regardless of whether you have FreeSync, G-Sync, or none of the above, because no matter what you have, it's going to make it a much better experience, as you're no longer going to get that awful tearing. And if you have G-Sync or FreeSync, once again, it's still going to give you that low latency input, as most of the time G-Sync or FreeSync should be enabled, and this is only going to kick in when it's absolutely necessary. But now that we have all that stuff taken care of, we can go ahead and exit out of the Nvidia control panel, of course, once you've hit apply on the bottom right corner. But of course, I already have all this stuff applied, so I don't have to. So I'm going to close out of this, and the next thing we're going to do is hit the Windows button, and we're going to look up mouse settings. Now, when you look up mouse settings, you're going to actually get this little thing here. You're going to click on it, and then you're actually going to have to scroll down and go to additional mouse settings, because there is one other thing here that we can do in Windows. It's going to make a big difference. Now that you have mouse properties open here, we're actually going to go ahead and move on to pointer options, and right under here you're going to see something called enhanced pointer precision. Now, this is actually enabled by default, and what this does is it's kind of like how in some games it'll make it feel a little bit smoother by having some sort of smoothness applied to the mouse itself. However, unfortunately, this is actually going to add some delay, and this could make the difference between you making that shot or missing it. So actually, you're going to want to make sure that this is disabled, and once you disable it and hit apply, you are almost certainly immediately going to notice that your mouse feels much snappier. And for all games that use raw input on your mouse, which is very common, this is going to give you a big advantage over people who do not have this setting disabled. And of course, everyone who has Windows is going to have this enabled by default. But there you go. That pretty much takes care of all the stuff that we need to do in Windows. You can go ahead and exit out of that once you're done. And now we're going to go ahead and get into the BIOS. So go ahead and click here, restart your computer, right like this, and then I'll meet you guys in the BIOS, and we'll go ahead and enable that one last setting that's super easy to enable that could increase your performance that unfortunately a lot of people forget to enable. All right, so when you're restarting, to get into the BIOS, make sure you mash either delete or F2, as those are the most common buttons to get in there. Now, once you're here, for most BIOSes, typically F7 is what you press to get into the advanced mode. Now, once you're in the advanced mode, you're going to go over to the section which gives you settings for overclocking, and all you're going to do is enable XMP. I know this is kind of silly, but a lot of people do forget to enable XMP, and if you bought a kit of memory that's, say, rated for like 3600 megahertz, unfortunately without XMP, you could be running at 2133 megahertz, and it could potentially be running far worse. So make sure that that is enabled, and then make sure you hit F10 and apply on restart. So there you go. Hopefully this did help you out. Now your system should have gone from absolute trash to actually pretty good. So if it did help you out, once again, make sure to share it with your friends. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next video. If you made it to the end of the video, be sure to drop a like. Every time you do so, AMD and Nvidia get more stock. Also, if you want to see more, click here. You won't be disappointed.